My name is Garret Watson. Today with me, my guest is Eli Carpenter, the new artistic director for SCRT, and one of his show directors, Jimmy Bruenger. Thanks, guys, for being with us.
Thanks for having us.
So, a little bit about your background. You were the assistant director for the Denver Performing Arts Center. Would you like to tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. So, after I graduated school, I grew up in Denver, but I moved back to Denver and started working at the Denver Center in their theater company as an assistant director. So, I worked on a couple shows, Secret Garden, a production of Frankenstein, a show called The Christians, and a show called Sweeney Todd.
Sweeney Todd, yeah, I love that one.
Yeah,
that's a good one. Great, and you're also a member of the Lincoln Center Directors Lab. What is that exactly?
Yeah, so the Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts, which is, of course, the most recognized theater institutions in the country. It's in Manhattan. It does a Directors Lab every summer, which is pretty cool. It's I always have a hard time describing it, but it's sort of like a conference / a workshop period. So the Lincoln Center Directors Lab takes 50 directors every summer, about half from the United States and half of the other 25 are from around the world. And all these directors come to Lincoln Center for about 3 weeks and just work together. Every summer the lab sort of has a different guiding principle about it, and that principle drives what you're talking about. And it just so happened that this past summer that I participated in the lab, a lot of the work that we ended up doing was talking about how you shape and run a regional theater. And so it's kind of become a really useful, it became a very useful experience now stepping into this position here.
Right, and speaking of stepping into this position as the artistic director, one of the things that a recent article that was written said, and is that you're trying to, or the board wants to bring the theater to a national standard in theater, and how are you going to try to accomplish that?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of ways we accomplish it. One of the very first things that we did starting out is looked externally, looked at what other large regional theaters are doing and what's been successful for them, and what of those things do we want to take, and what of those things do we want to incorporate into our organization. And so, very recently we went through a significant rebranding process. We have a new external look to, I think, bring us up a level and puts us at a different place and says that we are operating at a different level. Another big thing we're doing this summer, it's my belief that any large regional theater that really is participating in a national conversation about what theater is, often has a New Works program. And so this summer we'll begin a New Works initiative, and that means we will engage a writer in residence. This summer we'll be working with a writer, Alexander Sage Owen. Alex is an incredible young writer who I think we're so lucky to have here at the SCRT. So he'll come out a couple times throughout the year, and at the end of the summer he'll be out, and we will we'll produce a brand new work of his in a staged reading, which means there'll be music stands and chairs, and the actors will sit and stand and read. It won't be there won't be a set and costumes and those sorts of things. They'll be reading off of a page, because for 2 weeks Alex will be working and rewriting this piece with the actors. But I think
it'll really be a process.
It's about the process, right? It's about getting the show that he wants to work on to the next level, so that it can then be ready for production, potentially at the SCRT or another theater in the coming years.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, speaking of the process, Jimmy, of course, you're one of the show directors. So once the artistic director has kind of set the whole idea of the season, you kind of come in and take the specific shows.
Right.
And what is your part in all of this?
So my process in all of this, I think, has been really different and really exciting, because Eli told me about this when he was just jumping into it, and not only did it excite me, but also kind of scared me at the same time. But the process has been really, really wonderful, because we've been collaborating on between the two of us and the third director, Jamie Billings, on how do we create a season that's going to restructure audiences and possibly engage audiences in theater that they may not have experienced before. And so on top of that, we also have to figure out how can we fill those shows in this space, in this unique space, and how can we cast it with a cast of less than 10 people, and how do those actors work within the same 3 shows, and who do they play, and how will they be able to be present in the summer, doing, 3 different shows on top of a New Works initiative, on top of cabarets and whatever fun stuff we throw their way. But how do we really create a community within the actors, the directors, and then bring the audience into that community?
Yeah, so audience engagement is something that you're really trying to make happen.
You can say that. Yeah, you can say that. We're gonna, we've been talking a lot about transforming the space into a place that the audience feels just as engaged. Not only is the theater already intimate, but how can we make them a part of the story? How can we put them in the locations?
Yeah, and so how are you gonna be doing that?
I think you can you can take this one.
Well, so in addition to directing and choreographing what I think is our cornerstone piece this season, our second show that will open and our second musical, which is Evita by Andrew Lloyd Webber and Tim Rice. Jimmy will direct and choreograph that piece. But in addition to directing and choreographing that, he'll choreograph another piece, he'll work on a couple other things, and he's also our associate artistic director for the season, for the company. And so what that will mean, of course, is that he'll help me to oversee all artistic programming for this season, but that comes from the place that when we started looking at this summer and what we were going to produce, Jimmy has a concept for a production of Evita that allows for a company of 8 actors. Normally Evita would be produced with 20 or maybe 30 actors, and frankly, this stage is maybe a little too tight for 20 or 30 actors, and also I kind of am not excited by that. You could go see a 20 or 30 actor Evita anywhere, but how do you do an 8-person Evita? And Jimmy has constructed a version of Evita that minimizes and sort of condenses us to 8 actors.
And with that, it's still the entire show, and it's still all the music, and it's the same story. It's just setting it in a different atmosphere. Really, I'm revolving the show around the day that Eva Peron died in 1952, and really you'll be seeing the way that that culture grieved and either grieved or celebrated her death.
It'll be the Evita you've always loved and known, but a different approach.
Which really helps with trying to be recognized nationally. Is trying
yes.
to do something different that definitely catches attention.
Exactly.
So that's really great.
Exactly.
So there's an enormous amount of work that goes into producing these shows, and they call for a pretty substantial troupe. But like you're saying, you're trying to do it with smaller cast numbers. Is with the summer performance series, you try to bring in professional actors. Can you tell us, have you decided any of those actors yet, or are you still kind of in the process of looking?
Yeah, I think we're still in the process of looking. The trick about bringing a company together is always timing, right? when people are available and their calendars all line up and they're ready to be on board. But it's actually pretty standard that summer rep companies, really it's the spring that everything ramps up with who your full company is. We certainly have people in mind, and hopefully all of those go through, and we'll have a really exciting acting company this summer, and I think we're in a good place for that. But those specifics will be ironed out in the near future.
That's great.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, and then also you're calling this season a season with a splash. Could you go into a little bit of detail about why you came up with that?
Yeah. So another artistic director who I very much look up to, a director in Boston at the American Repertory Theater, Diane Paulus, and she's also directs on Broadway often. Her first season at the American Repertory Theater, she talked about how she knew she couldn't just throw a pebble into what was happening. She had to throw a boulder in to really make something happen and wake people up and figure out how to re-engage an audience. And that idea really resonates with me of how do you engage an audience. I don't know that it works to just do something small. You really have to throw something big into that pond and see what happens and watch the splash.
Yeah.
Enjoy the splash. So
Yeah, the water analogy seems a little less painful than throwing a boulder.
yeah, right.
That's great. So yeah, I think I speak for all the viewers that are watching when I say that we're really excited about this season. And how and when can we find out more about the season that is coming up?
Yeah, so the full season will be announced in late January, and then we'll have additional programming, I think, announced later throughout the spring. But we'll have some new lines of programming that we haven't had in previous seasons. Like I mentioned, there was some new works element to our summer. We'll have some different cabaret pieces than usual. And I think it all will be really exciting.
That's great. Well, I had to say that interviewing you guys, I was a little nervous today because it's like I'm interviewing directors, so I really got to be on my game. But y'all are really nice and laid back, and I'm sure that we've got a lot of great things to expect from you. Eli, Jimmy, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Eli Carpenter and Jimmy Bruenger are new directors for the SCRT Theater this year. For more information and to get those tickets in advance, go to scrtheater.com. That's SCRTHEARTRE.com. Thanks.